Uh,
Hey, what's going on, guys? I got a special guest here today. We have Coach Dan Gordon. He works with badass entrepreneurs to advance the consciousness of this planet. Dan, Coach Dan, what does that even mean?
I know, right? And like full disclosure, right? Because I love authenticity. 5 minutes ago, you said, how do you want to be introduced, right? And that was the first thing that popped into my mind. And the reason that it was is that is my mission. And like right before I said it, I thought, God, do I even want to say that? Is that going to make me sound full of myself? And so this is exactly what I want to talk about. The thing that you don't want to do is the thing that you must do. All right. And now it's a little bit of a hairy, big ass suggestion, right? Because, well, I don't want to blindfold myself and walk across the highway, right? So should I do that? Like, well, no. But the thing that you don't want to do that won't cause you physical harm, do it, right? And so what consciousness is the understanding that you have millions of years of evolution that is preventing you from doing the things and taking the risk that you should be doing to grow and become the greatest version of yourself. Right.
Yeah.
So you're going to have a million reasons not to do something that's going to move you forward in life, in business, in love, in everything. And those reasons, those stories aren't going to sound like excuses. They're going to sound like perfectly reasonable reasons, but they're
Yes.
not.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, because you start to realize it with the people you hang out with. So, like this
Mm,
past week, I told you I just went on a family vacation.
yeah.
Now we're here. So that means I spent a lot of time with my family, which means I got some of the mannerisms where it's like you look at something and they just use terms and words that I don't use every single day that aren't good or bad, but it gets your consciousness thinking differently when you're like,
Mm,
oh, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And like it might be around financials or it might be around the
yeah.
gym, it might be around whatever, but it puts us in this different state where it's like people might go to the gym and you might go 2 times a day and you're like, why are you going 2 times a day? Do you need
Right.
that? Like enjoy yourself. Take
So,
time off.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. And
I
it's
love that. Right. So like, let me give you a classic example. All right.
yeah.
I can't afford it. Right now,
Yes.
I can't afford it does not sound like a story, right? It doesn't sound like an excuse. You can point to your bank account in the 3D world and say, I cannot afford it. Like, look at the money that I have, look at the price of this thing. Makes sense. I can't afford it. But I can't afford it is a construct. It is an idea that was presented to you very early on in life. And it was
Yes.
connected with reality, but it's not. So
Yeah.
here's how this goes. You want something. You look at your bank account and you say, oh, I want it, but I can't afford it. Now you stop, right? Immediately you stop wanting it, right? You distract yourself, you go somewhere else, you think different thoughts, and you distract yourself from this thing that would enhance your life. So, what I can't afford it does is it stops you from going deeper and asking the more important question, which is, how am I limiting myself? How are my beliefs limiting myself? How are my beliefs limiting my income in a way that is preventing me from having everything that I want?
Yeah.
So, here's the answer: double your prices, right? Double your prices, right? If you can't afford something and you're an entrepreneur, just double what you're selling, like double the prices of what you're selling. Right now we start getting into it, right? Well, I
Yeah.
can't do that. I'll lose all my clients. Story, right? I can't do that. Like no one's going to hire me. Story, right? None of that's happening. You're just
Yeah.
imagining it, right? Oh well, I've done market research. Story, right? Your value, the thing that people will buy is based on what they think the value is. And what they think the value is what you create. Like look at
Yeah.
it. Look, I live in Los Angeles, right? I go down Rodeo Drive and I see handbags for $40,000, $100,000. Why? Right?
Yeah.
Because those people, The people who sell those, who created those bags, have done a tremendous job of selling us on the idea that that's the value. You can do
Yes.
the same thing. You who are listening can do the same thing. You want to afford something, double your prices. Now, when people give you pushback on the price, that's where you're going to learn about your limited thinking in what you believe your value is. That's consciousness.
That's incredible. And the funny thing is, even if your price is originally, you're still probably getting pushback on the price. So you might as
Yeah.
well have a higher price so you could actually do more stuff with the pushback. Because I was actually talking to some clients about this, and I was
Mhm.
basically explaining that if you don't charge premium pricing, then you can't provide premium service.
I
Like,
love
what does
it.
that
I love
mean?
it. Yeah.
I was like, everyone was like, "Oh, like you're taking the week off from because you're going on vacation." I'm like, "Yes, like the Wi-Fi is not there, so I'm gonna send everybody a gift for the coaching group." And they're like, "Well, how do you do that?" And I'm like, "Well, you get paid and then you send it out. Like that's how you." And I'm like, "If you don't charge enough, then you can't give them a good gift." Like that's
Right.
just what it
Yeah.
is. So I was like, "You have to realize these things because these are phantom costs, like made up costs. Because some people will just skip a week and it's like snooze you lose. Jordan took a
Yeah.
week off, and it's like, no, that's not fair. That's not
No,
what they're
it's
paying
not.
for. It. That's not the
Right.
value provided.
And
So
it's not your brand, right? It's like you, in everything that you do, Jordan, and you listening, in everything that you do, you're telling people a story about who you are, right?
yeah,
So, like, let's say you ask me to drive you to the airport, and on the way to pick you up, I get in a car accident, and I call you up and go, "Oh man, I am so sorry. I got in a car accident. I can't take it to the airport," right? Now, what I've done is I've told you a story that I'm going to let circumstances in my life, I'm going to let circumstances prevent me from following through on my word of getting you to the airport. So here's what I would do. I get into a car accident. First of all, not first of all, but just as a side note, later I'm going to ask myself, I wonder why I didn't want to pick up Jordan and take him to the airport because I create everything in my life. So I created that car accident for the purpose of growth and consciousness. And I'm going to learn something about myself. Okay, forget that for a moment, or we'll just put that to the side. Now, I still have a job, a responsibility to get your ass to the airport. So I'm going to grab my phone, I'm going to schedule an Uber, right? I'm going to
yeah,
get you picked up and I'm going to pay for it. And I'm going to call you up and say, hey, man, I just got into a car accident and Uber is on the way. Have a great flight, right?
yeah.
Boom. I just told you a completely different story about who I am than in the first scenario. Dan follows through.
Yes, yes. And there, where did this come from you? When did this transition happen in your life? Because I realize that there's so many people who allow circumstances to take over, but you're
Yeah,
running through that scenario, and I'm like, wait a second, he's right. Like I would have called, like I don't know that I would have called the Uber, but now I'm going to call the Uber because I say I'm going to do something,
right.
I'm going to do something. It's your brand.
Absolutely. Yes, right. And when you make a commitment, that's your word. That's your bond. That's what you
Yeah,
have to do. Right. You don't say sorry, right? Like
yeah,
I have a rule in my company. I have a bunch of people that work for me. My employees, if they make a mistake, they can't say I'm sorry. What they have to do is they have to come up with a solution. They
yeah,
have to tell me how they created the circumstance, right? Uh, Create the solution, how they came up, or how they created the problem and what they learned from it.
yeah.
Then, if they want, they can say I'm sorry. But
Yes, and I love
right,
it creates a culture of not it's his fault or my fault or anyone's
yeah.
fault. It's just, hey, this is what happened. This is how we're going to adjust, and this is how we're going to keep moving forward.
And it's too easy, right? It's too easy to say I'm sorry. And it's a stupid, socially acceptable coupon for nothing, right? Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Like, here, let me dump my problem on you, right? You were relying on me to get you to the airport. Now I got a problem. And here, I'm going to dump it on you,
yeah,
That's like, what kind of person do you want to be?
yeah. And I think that's super beneficial because I actually have clients that they might be like a minute late and they're like, I'm sorry. And it's like, don't say that. Like, even if
Yeah,
you're a minute late, like, just let me know that you're going to be a couple minutes late, like 2 minutes before. Just say, hey, I'm going to be two
yeah.
minutes late. That's fine. Don't just be late and then say sorry. because then it gives all the power. Instead, you could say something like, thanks for your patience. Like, where it changes the whole social construct. Because when you say sorry, it's just handing over your power. And it's like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Like, you got,
When
you got,
when I used to
you got to
do
stay in control.
when I used to do in person networking, meet at diner, coffee shop, whatever, and hey, I would do my best to get there at the time or earlier than I promised. Sometimes there were situations that happened and, all for my learning. But what I did is I always kept a stack of Starbucks cards in my bag. Right. So if I'm a minute late, it doesn't matter how late I am, I broke my word. I say I'm going to be there at noon. I'm there at 12:01. Am I there at noon? No, I lied. Right. So I do an immediate makeup. I give them a Starbucks card and I say, hey, I just want you to know my word is really important to me. And I apologize for wasting your time. Please, next time you go get a coffee, let me buy it and give them a Starbucks card.
Yeah.
And I tell you something, the crazy thing was I actually gained yardage doing that.
Because you build rapport with people. And
Yeah, right.
people don't realize that if you give first, and this is for everyone listening, that the fact that you can give someone first instead of being like, we have to get the sale right now. No.
Yeah.
Give them value, give a little bit more value, give some more, and then
Uh-huh.
finally you can kind of build up a, hey, this is what I'm up to. If you're interested, love to have this conversation with you. If you're not,
Absolutely.
all good. Because when you're going right into the sale, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But with a high, just you want to build rapport with people and you want to push them in the correct direction.
Yeah, and I really appreciate what you just said. Push them in the right direction. Everyone's worried about being pushy, but I want you to think about it this way, you who are listening. If you had somebody that you loved who was suffering from the disease of alcoholism, and you pulled together a an intervention, right? And at the end of the intervention, the person that you love says, "Wow, this really made a difference. I'm definitely going to think about going to rehab. I'm definitely going to think about this. Thank you." And if you went, okay, thanks. I'm so glad that you're going to think about it. Like, I don't want to be pushy. Like, I don't want to force you. I don't want to put pressure on you. So you think about it, right? Well, what are they going to do? They're going to leave that intervention. They're going to go to a bar because the intervention, the act of the intervention is makes them feel bad. And so they're going to use their soothing mechanism and probably a lot of it. They're going to go to a bar, they're going to get drunk or go home and go somewhere and get drunk. They're going to get in their car, they're going to run into a freaking school bus and kill a bunch of kids. And that's on you, right? Because you were unwilling to be influential and to
Yeah.
stand in the fire of someone's disapproval. You
Yeah.
killed those kids, right? So
Wow.
that's what's important. And when I'm selling, look, not everything is an alcoholic intervention, but when I'm talking to people about coaching, I'm not pressuring them and saying, you got to coach with me. You have to like, you have to invest in yourself. Like that's a bunch of crap. But what I do talk to them about is what they want and how they're
Yeah.
going to get it and who in their life is committed to making sure that they get it.
Yeah.
And if they don't coach with me, what are they going to do to get it?
Yeah.
Right.
And
So
it's
I'm,
not,
yeah,
yeah,
go ahead. Go
it's
ahead.
this major idea of like, not if we do this or don't do this, but it's like, if we don't do this, what will change in your life?
Right. Right. And
And a lot,
because they're there in front of me, right? Because we're talking, I have a responsibility to move them in some direction, to, as you said, push them in some direction, right? To
yeah,
where, and I'm like, if they don't want to coach with me, fine. I'm going to give them, a link to my audiobook or some other things, some other content to help move them forward. And I'm going to check in with them a couple weeks later. Hey, where are you? Because
yeah,
it's my responsibility. They came
yeah,
to me.
yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I hear that. How did you get into all this entrepreneurial badassness and where did this come from?
So about 20 some odd years ago, I took a personal development course And the course, it's no longer around. It's called Understanding Yourself and Others. But I took this course. Nothing was working in my life. And a friend of mine, talk about love, a friend of mine took 3 years to enroll me in this course. She was just
Wow.
kept hammering me. You got to, and then I broke up with someone. I was just miserable. And I thought, well, something's got to change. So I take this course, this 3-day, really intensive course. And the second day of the course is 40 people in there. I'm up in front of the room and working with the instructor and I started complaining about my dad. Like that was my big story in my life, how my dad abused me. And yeah, I mean, he was a mean guy. He was super mean, right? But I had this big story that I told everybody. And so I'm, he did this and he hurt me. And he just asked my friends why he was friends with me when I was fat. And it just never fit, right? And the instructor, he lets me just kind of get done with vomiting out my story. And he goes, okay, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? And I thought, me? We got to change my dad. Like, he's the problem. That was my first thought. And then my next immediate thought was, holy crap, he's right. Like, listen to me. Know what I sound like? My dad. Like, that was his game, blaming everybody else. Like, wow, I picked it up. And I just looked at him and I said, I don't know. And so we started down this road that day of how I create the crap I don't like in my life. I eventually became an instructor of this course, flew around the country and in Europe teaching these intensive seminars, um, moved to LA, made some movies because that's what you have to do here when you move here. Got into personal development here, started a
But
marketing company, and yeah.
yeah, no, the reason I ask that is because I think it's so powerful, that questioning of, because I know every single day we deal with someone complaining to us
Yeah,
every
right.
single day. So if you ask that question and have that wording of like, what are we gonna do now?
Yeah.
Like, what's gonna change? Because it puts the lens back on them and it allows them to open up their perspective to really go, wait, you're telling me even though I had a bad circumstance, I had negative this, negative that, it's
Yeah.
still me? It's still my
Yes.
fault?
Yeah.
How
Hey,
could
look,
that be?
if you're over 32 and you're still blaming your parents, you got a problem. All right. I give you till 32, right? 32 to get your shit together. But if you're over 32 and you're still blaming your parents, you're the one with the problem. I don't care if they're still doing their crap, they're going to do what they're going to do, or blaming anybody. It's
Yeah,
up to you. I was at a leadership workshop. It was a super intense workshop. Like I hated it for 2 days and then I loved it. But I was um they gave us these books to take notes, and I don't like writing things. I like taking notes on my phone. It backs up to the cloud, right?
yeah,
And so I'm taking notes, and in the middle of the course, this one guy turns to me, starts screaming at me. He goes, "You are distracting me with your phone. Like, I'm trying to concentrate, and all I see is you screwing around with your phone. Like you are ruining this for me."
yeah,
And and now I could have said, "Hey, don't tell me what to do. You got no right, right?" But I
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah,
stopped and I paused and I looked at him and I said, "I'm just not that powerful." Right? He was blaming me for the experience that he was having. I said, "Look, I'm just not that powerful. I'm not, I didn't say this, but the point is, I'm not upsetting you. You're upsetting yourself."
yeah,
All right. And then someone asked me, "What are you doing on your phone?" I said, "I'm taking notes." And she said, "Well, why don't you take notes in the book?" I said, "I prefer to take them on my phone."
yeah,
Right. So I was just responding to what people were saying. They were inviting me, they were baiting me to get into an argument with them, but I wouldn't do it. Right.
yeah.
Because my serenity is my responsibility, right?
Yes.
Not someone else's. And what was so cool, man, later in the course, the same guy said, "You were really pissing me off." And I said, "Why are you giving me so much power? Like, why are you doing this?" And he stopped and he said, "I don't know." And it was a really cool, like, that's consciousness right there.
Yeah,
And I just turned to him, I said, "Thank you. Like, thank you for saying that. Like, I see the gears turning." And
yeah,
this
dude.
is right. This is my life, man. This is how I just broke my chair. That's awesome. Like this is totally my life, right? I, there has been so many situations where people have blamed me for the things that's going on for them just because I'm standing in my truth. And I look at the greats, right? Martin Luther King, like Martin Luther King's never said, I have been shamed and blamed and I've
Yeah.
been disrespected and it hurts and people have got to turn it around. Like he never said that, man. He was badass. He took full responsibility for everything in his life and he just focused on his mission, right?
Yeah.
He never sat in this victim space of look at all these things that are being done to me. Like
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah. And nowadays, people are incentivized to be victims,
I
and
know, right?
it's just not the thing to do. And what it really is, it comes down to is really facing our fears and facing our fear of rejections and really
Yeah.
overcoming all that. So, how have you used that tactic where I remember in our pre-call you talked about it where you did scary things each month, like because I think
Yeah.
that's a really actionable thing that the audience can do. Where if they're scared of, I don't know, their boss, or scared of their
Yeah.
parents, or scared of their relationship, or scared of anything, like you just
Hmm.
have to realize that nothing's that bad. It's not this or death. It's
Yeah. But the thing is, it's always going to feel like death, right? It's always going to feel that way. We have been designed by, call it God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, happenstance, to be in a constant state of fear for our survival, a constant state of fear for our survival. So when we're walking up to our crush to ask them out, right? Inside of us, there's a part of us that says, don't do this, you're going to die. Right. It doesn't make any sense, but that's how it goes. Right. Because the fear of rejection is based on the fear of being isolated. When we were cave people, if we were isolated, if we were kicked out of the group, it was death. Right. We would
yeah,
die. So you first have to understand and come to terms with the fact that you're never going to stop feeling fear. Right?
yes,
People say, "Wow, Dan, it's amazing. You're so fearless." I'm like, "I'm not fearless. I felt a lot of fear before we got on this call.
yes,
Like what's it going to be like? What if it tank?" And it's just so you have to develop a relationship with the feelings, the thoughts that tell you that you're going to stop. And
yes.
I do a lot of work in terms of calming my emotions, calming my reactions. And look, I've tried everything. I tried meditating, right? I tried just like focusing and breathing. I tried microdosing, and I found one thing that I call my secret weapon. And I've fallen in love with this. There's a technology called binaural beats, and it is a, sound waves that happen underneath music. And so, hold on a
Okay.
second. Sorry. And so, what happens underneath this music are audio waveforms that affect your brain, and your brain gets attached to them. So, I found this one company called Nucalm, Nucalm.
Okay.
And these people have worked with over 50 professional sports teams, the Department of
Oh wow.
Defense, Special Forces, Navy SEALs, like people with a lot more stress than you and I, right? And you listening. And these different organizations have used this because it improves your sleep, which is like the number one thing that most entrepreneurs need. It enhances your focus, and most importantly, it reduces your stress. So I
Yeah.
started using this. It's an app on your phone. It just sounds like music. It doesn't sound like anything else. And it has done all of these things. So I called up this company. I'm like, I love this. I've got to get into this. Like I want to help spread
Yes.
the word. So they gave me a free trial to give to other people. And to get it, just text the word calm, CALM, to this number, 213-409-8366. 213-409-8366, and text the word calm, CALM, 213-409-8366. And you'll get a link to get a free trial of this. So the reason that I love this is that you can't do it on your own. You can't just say, I'm not going to be afraid. You can't just say, I'm going to work through my stress. You need help. And this is the best tool I have found. It is so easy. I
Yeah.
use it every night to get deeper sleep. I use it every morning to enhance my focus. I use it throughout the day when I'm getting frustrated to bring me back. So
Yeah.
really encourage everybody.
No, I
Yeah.
you go.
So okay. So all that said, the question was, how do you manage this, right? How do you manage this? So that's step one. Step two is to understand that it's going to take you a while to get good at anything. Right. So when I first started selling, being in sales, I would hyperventilate before and after every sales meeting, sometimes during the sales meeting, right? And the the thing that I would do is I would take a deep dive and think, okay, what is going on? Like, what are the beliefs that I'm supercharging right now that are causing these feelings? All right. And you start going down that rabbit hole and it's really intense. Like, okay, I'm never going to be able to sell. I'm going to fail. I'm going to have to, just get a 9 to 5 job again, or I'm going to end up homeless. Like all of these things that are so antithetical to my personality of success. Right? But I
Yes.
was believing that they would happen. So you have to really develop this relationship and understanding with this part of you that's telling you stories that aren't true. And
Yes.
so when you ease your stress and also sort of develop these things, now you can start to talk to it. And that's what I do. Like before the podcast, it was like, hey, all right, I'm feeling scared. Like, but know what? It's going to be okay. Like I've already met Jordan. He's a cool guy. We've already asked. So I think it'll be fine. And even if it tanks, I'm still going to be fine. Like my
Yeah.
ship will always right itself.
Yeah. What I really agree with the fact that there are a ton of tools to get there. It might be binaural beats, it might be breath work in the morning, it might be
Yeah.
anything. And the other one we were talking about that was massive, in my opinion, is the number of reps. Peop- People have no idea how many reps it takes to actually get good at something. So,
Right. Yeah.
so we sit there and it's like, wow, like you did incredible in that. Like my fiance was trying to be like, Jordan, you did incredible in that podcast. Like I did one earlier this morning, and they're like, that was incredible. And I'm like, she's like, it's so easy for you. I'm like, Madison, I've done 170 of them. Like,
Right.
not saying
I
I'm
know.
good, but it's just like you've done a lot. Like,
Yeah.
and what about the ones that you do and like maybe it doesn't go well? Sure, you learn from those. But
Yeah.
either way, it's just hey, we got to realize that everyone, if someone's better at something than you, we always try to relate it down to sports. I feel like because that's as kids,
Mm.
everyone grows up and they're like, it's sports.
Yeah.
Yes, some people are genetically more gifted in entrepreneurship. Some people are genetically more gifted, but a
Yes.
majority of it is skill set and doing enough reps to be like, okay, I've gotten rejected 100 times today.
Hmm.
This is
Yeah.
fantastic. We have to be getting closer. Like,
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. You never know when it's going to hit, right?
yeah,
You can never be certain when things are going to start turning around. About 8 years ago, I had a marketing company. I made some mistakes. I lost over $100,000, tens of thousands of dollars in debt, literally on the floor in snot and tears, right? I had an emotional breakdown.
yeah,
But the thing is, I had done the reps to remind myself eventually that the reason I was there was I created that problem. And then I could ask myself, why did I create that? And the answer was, I hate marketing. I'm just good at it. Right. It was never
yes.
supposed to be a career. This was supposed to be my career. So I
And
started doing this.
that right there, this whole idea of you go to zero and then you can't, could you make it all back? And like people always say that you can, or like wherever you're at in your skill set.
Yeah.
The thing I say about
Yeah.
that is just like, you're never at zero. You never lose all the relationships. You never lose the mindset. You never lose the reps. So even if you are at theoretically, quote unquote, zero,
Yeah.
you still have the thing to go, I've done this before.
Hmm.
I've been there. I've built stuff. I've done these things. So every experience you have stacks. So that's why it's great to go and like, this is what I do sometimes where I do hobbies and I'm like, I go and just be a beginner. Like,
Yeah.
I go to like on the cruise ship this weekend, on this week, there's literally a surfing thing and I kept trying to get in the good group, and I just didn't have the skill set. But every time I just kept going because the thing
Yeah.
is that you learn through trial and error.
Yeah.
And you can't just always get up on something and be like, yo, I'm great. But I know when I'm 45, I want to be great at that. So it's
Yeah,
like, if I have the opportunity to do it, you got to do it. And these
completely.
are the little things. Yeah, you got to realize that it's not about today. It's about the success you're going to have in 10, 15, 20, 40 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And right. And so I would guess every time you went surfing, there was a level of fear. There was uncertainty. You didn't know if you were going to get better. You didn't know if it was going to be like it's never going to go away. And
Yeah.
frankly, if it goes away, it means that you are way underperforming, right? Like,
Yes.
there was a time in your life when tying your shoe was the most difficult thing. And
Yes.
maybe like your friends, they could all tie their shoes and you couldn't yet. And you were just stressed out about it. You felt bad about yourself. Like, oh, if I could just tie my shoes, my life will be perfect. Right. Now, you don't even think about tying your shoes now or how great you are at it because it's right. And nothing changes. And if you're living your life correctly, you're always putting like you're lifting the bar and then you're putting another uh weight on it, right? You're making it heavier.
Yeah.
Doing it, you're making it heavier, right?
I, and that brings up such a good point because life is skill acquisition. And I've been thinking about this concept a lot where it's you acquire new skills, and then once you're conditioned in them, you don't even think of them as skills. Like no
Yeah,
one thinks of the skill of tying your shoes as a skill,
right.
but we can tie our shoes. We don't think of the skill of like putting on our pants as a skill, or even the fact of going to the bathroom.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
everyone had to learn or walking. Like we don't
Mhm.
think of these as skills, but after a certain point, what I realized is a lot of people don't want to acquire new skills, which is a
Yeah.
shame. And I would question everyone in the audience of like, what is the new skill that you're looking to acquire
Mm.
this week, this month, this year? Because, and it could be knitting, it could be flying a kite, it could be jogging, it can be any skill, but we
Yeah.
don't give ourselves that space of being a beginner and that learning often enough.
I love it. I love it. And look, I want to make an offer to your audience, and that is that it's very clear that the people listening to you are badass entrepreneurs. Like they wouldn't be into this conversation. You who are listening right now, you wouldn't have listened this far into it with all the things that we're talking about. If you weren't badass, you just say, "Oh, that's a bunch of crap. I don't believe in it." So I want to make you an offer that you can't refuse. I want to give you 15 minutes of my time, and I mean it, like 15 minutes of my time. Not to sell you, not to close you, not to make you a client, but give you 15 minutes to help you become the best version of yourself. And and I mean it. Like I know people get really averse to talking with me. Like he's a sales coach. He's going to try to sell me something. Like, no, I'm going to help you first. If you're interested in coaching with me, we can have that conversation at another time, but we won't have it in that 15 minutes. My promise. And so if you want to book a call with me, you just text the word help because you're asking for help to that same number, 213-409-8366. 213-409-8366. Text the word help and you'll get a link to book a call with me. And let's talk for 15 minutes about what you're struggling with, what you want, and I'll give you some ideas about how you can get there.
Absolutely. And Dan is a values first kind of guy. Like when I was asking Dan, I always ask everyone in my audience, I'm like, hey, like everyone who comes on the podcast, I ask them, I'm like, hey, before you come on the podcast, like what is the most important thing to you? Some people are like, I want to promote this, I want to promote that, I want to do whatever. Dan is like, I don't even want to tell anyone I'm a coach. I just want to provide value. Like, and so that's why I know these things he's doing are good. And I'd recommend you check them out because there might be a value there. Even if it's just a quick conversation, you never
Yeah.
know what you're going to learn or what you're going to take away from these different things. And I know Dan's one of these guys who's reciprocity everywhere. We know if we flower 1,000 seeds, we'll get 100 flowers. Like
Yep.
it's
Yeah.
not that every person give and take, but it's more of a helping out everyone, and then you see where that lands you.
Yeah. And that's it, man. I mean, I have never sold anybody anything. I've just provided so much value that the people who have a vision of their greatest selves say yes. right?
Yeah,
They have the vision of their greatest selves, not how much money they can make, but how they can exist as their most awesome, highest vision of who they can be in the world. Because,
absolutely.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you can always make more money, right? But and that's the thing, when people talk to me and they say, well, I want to make $1 million. I'm like, okay, but who do you want to be as a millionaire? Like, how do you want that? Like, okay, let's say I get you $1 million. Are you just, is that it? Now you're happy? Now everything's perfect? Like, well, no. Like, okay, great. Well, then who do you want to be with $1 million? Like, well, and they'll say, well, I want to, donate and help people. Like, why aren't you doing that now? Well, I need the money. Like, well, when you have $1 million, you're just going to up your lifestyle anyway. It's not going to feel any different. You're still going to say, I don't have enough money. And frankly,
Yes.
$1 million isn't that much money. I have $1 million. It's not that much money. It
Yeah.
really isn't. It doesn't change anything.
And a lot of we don't real and that's the toughest part is that we put so much emphasis on this money chasing, but
Yeah.
it's like we were talking about before, it's the skill acquisition, it's the value acquisition, it's the incredible memories you make with your family, it's the incredible memories you make with your friends, it's the spiritual trips that you can go on, it's the fact that you can go to a men's retreat or whatever you want to
Yeah.
do. And it's that ability of saying yes and opening up your life because there's so much scarcity mindset for
Hmm.
so long for a lot of people that they never realize the abundance the world really has.
Yeah. And it really comes down to, I mean, it's exactly what you're saying, Jordan. Exactly. And it comes down to how much discomfort are you willing to endure to get what you want?
Yeah.
I've gone to all these different speaking events. I've gone to these different multi-level marketing events because I like seeing how people sell. And the thing that I hate is when they say things like, I want you to imagine taking your entire family on an all expenses paid trip and you're paying for it. Like, wouldn't you love that? And yeah, that's great. That's a beautiful vision. And then like, so sign up, right? But what they're not saying is, okay, great that you want that. Before you get there, let's talk about how much discomfort you're willing to endure to get there, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not just going to happen, right? You're going to have to learn a lot of things. You're going to have to, as you say, Jordan, do the reps, right? You're going to have to step into new ways of being. That part of you that wants to keep you safe is going to tell you not to do it. So you better make sure that you're willing to be uncomfortable before you sign up for anything.
And the funniest thing about that is that when I think about that, where it's like, oh, sign up, that's like signing up for a marathon. You don't
Yeah.
realize the journey you're about to go on, where it's like, we got to run 2 miles, we got to run 20 miles, we got to run
Yeah.
15 miles. And you're doing all of these things because the journey's so much longer than the 7 days that you went on vacation with your family. It's the
Yeah.
3+ years that you were grinding to even conceptually imagine that idea. And people always want this to be super quickly, and you have to realize that you have to embrace the journey. So it's
Mm.
about creating a journey that you really love and not just a destination that's amazing, but a journey you really love. That's how I like to think about it, at least.
And know what's funny too is that if you're that person who has created that situation for your family to go on an all expenses paid trip, you're going to be the person least on vacation, right? Because the life that you have created in order to do that is a life that needs to be managed. And you're going to be managing that life. They've taken time off of their 9 to 5 job. But if you're a badass entrepreneur, it's not like you're working all the time, but what you're creating or what you have created is always a part of you. It's like a kid, right? You never stop
Yeah.
being a parent, right? You never stop being a business owner, even when you're on
Yeah.
vacation. I'm always thinking about what's the next thing I can create, especially when I'm in my downtime because my mind is a lot more open.
Yeah.
So don't kid yourself, right? By the time that you get there, you're going to be a very different person.
Yes. And now you might not even like the same vacations.
I know, right? You might not even want to take your family. You're like, man, kind of a pain in the ass, actually, now that I think about it. So it's never what you think it is. I mean, look, it's great that Rosalind and I, love of my life, that like last year we went to Panama, right? Kind of on a
Love that.
spur of the moment, right? And it was a great trip. And it was great that we could just do it. But everything leading up to that trip was a lot of work. And the trip was great. And then coming back, there was a firestorm of work and it was all great, right? And while I was there, I was recording videos and things like, oh, hey, this can help, further my interest. But it's not just life of bliss because I have money. Right? It's
Yeah.
like it's like buying an amusement park. And everybody's like, wow, you're so lucky because you can ride the rides and anytime that you want. Well, people don't understand that when you close the doors of the amusement park, like you got to fix the roller coaster and
There's
make
a
sure,
cleaning
like,
process.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, you got to sweep up and make sure that the vending machines are working. It's a lot of work.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's not that anything's ever going to get easier. You're just going to
Yeah,
get better as an individual.
yeah,
So it's how do you get better quicker? Which is why you're listening to the Clocked In podcast.
right, yeah,
There's hopefully some tips along the way that help you get better because we we always find ourselves in these places. You want to have the skill sets before you reach the challenge. Like you
yeah.
want to be ready to dive in going into this. So that's why it's always good to find yourself challenges along the way that might
Mm,
be inside of work or might be outside of work, whatever they are. But I've always found that super helpful for me because otherwise we're just living, you know what I mean?
right,
And it's
yeah.
like you grow or you die. Like, so how do you want to grow?
I got along this theme of you just don't know until you're in it. I got a buddy of mine who's pretty successful in the rock and roll field. And I said, tell me something that most people don't know about being a rock star. And he said, it is boring. It is so boring. Like most of being a rock star is boring. You will be bored out of your mind, right? Because it's a lot of traveling, it's a lot of setup, it's a lot of practice, it's a lot of, fine tuning. And, it is, 10,000 hours and then a couple hours on stage, right? And so that's why you have to do what you're passionate about. That's why my marketing company failed. I didn't love it. I was just good at it. That's
Yeah.
why I'm willing to do all the things I'm doing now, like being on podcasts and talking about this because I know I'm reaching more people. I'm opening up more consciousness. I'm affecting more lives. That's my entire life.
Yeah.
So, and I work at it all the time. It doesn't feel like work all the time, but it's my passion. And so
Yeah.
you damn well better be doing what you love because you're going to be doing it all the time.
Yeah. And I think that's the best thing that you brought up is that when you're doing it, sometimes it doesn't feel the words we use have limitations, right? So we use the word
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
and we don't really know what that means. That usually means boring, mundane, this, that. And sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But like sometimes there's exciting things that happen and you're like, yeah, I mean, that's what you look forward to. Those are the things you're pumped up about, and those are the things you look forward to. But like, you also got to show up for all these other things, and it's
Yeah.
important to be there in your best presence. So, like, for the audience, I think it's so helpful to realize that not every day people want to do stuff, but like, if you show up every day, like, it's gonna be your best day, and
Mm,
maybe you change the scenarios. Like, maybe you're working at the front desk of a hotel
yeah.
and instead, like you're not really selling people, you're just helping people out. But instead, maybe your gauge of winning the day is like, hey, I got 5 thank yous today. Like,
Yeah. Right.
or I got 5 smile. Like you got to change the gauges so that you can find winning each and every day in your life.
Mm. It's I'm so appreciative of that, Jordan. I mean it because that message, right? Reinforcing that message is what drives people to be better, right?
Yes.
It isn't the pursuit of something. It is creating the life that you want. Like
Yes.
classic example, I have a Tesla Model X, and people are, oh wow, that's so awesome. But here's the thing: Rosalind and I love traveling. We hate driving. So, and we want to like pack up our gear and go travel and work and travel and work, like grab an Airbnb somewhere, work for a while, travel. Like, okay. So in order to do that, I needed a car that I didn't have to drive. Right. And
Yeah.
so, boom, Tesla has that. Awesome. It's a big car. We can put all of our gear in it. Boom. Awesome. Okay. So the price of the thing that I want is $114,000.
Yeah.
Now, look, I'm a Midwestern Jewish guy, right? Like buying a car that expensive. I mean, I about had a coronary when I saw the price of it. And it took me a while to get there. And I said, and look, I don't have that money just sitting in a bank account, right? So I'm like, okay, wait a second. Do I really want this? And like, no, I don't want the car. I want the life that I just described. And the price tag on that life was $114,000. Now I could say I can't afford it, but instead of saying that, I said, okay, it's important that I create the money to
Yes.
to to create this, right? And so what was my limitation that I was living under that was preventing me from just being able to buy that car outright, right? Did a lot of work on it,
Yeah.
increased my prices. That was challenging, right? But all of these things conspired to make me better at who I am and how I do what I do. Right?
Yes.
Because if I'm charging more, then I have to be delivering more value. Now, that's not, my clients can't gauge it. That's my own level of morality.
Yeah. And
Right?
what we don't realize a lot of the time is that we undervalue ourselves. Like we
Completely.
don't,
Yeah.
yeah. And because we don't realize the value that we're providing to people, which can be kind of challenging. And sometimes you got to keep
Mhm.
working towards that and you're going to have bumps along the road, but you will figure out who your tribe is if you speak with enough people.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes. Hey, I'm going to give away one more thing. Can I do that?
sure.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about story, right? The stories that we tell ourselves. When I was recovering from the loss of my business and having to eradicate my stories, I wrote a book called Jumping the Gap, Kill Your Story and Take Action, right? Because it was the stories that was preventing me from being who I am. And so to get that book, and it's a really short book, easy read, really fun, just text the word GAP, GAP, same number, 213-409-8366. And by the way, with all of these things, you're not going to go into some funnel. You're not going to be, okay, here's your free book. Now buy this stupid thing. It's none of that. You just get it, right? In the three things I've mentioned, GAP, GAP, 213-409-8366, Calm, CALM, same number. It is, and help, HELP, 213-409-8366. It's all the same thing. You just get an automated text back that says, hey, here's how to get this thing.
Yeah.
And you know, over 1,000 people have gotten this book, and I get tons and tons of thank yous. And it's really joyful to see the consciousness I'm bringing and the openness and the new ways people are living their life because of this content.
Yeah, I absolutely love that and I appreciate that because it really does move the needle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It shows more. So, Dan, anything else? Where can people find you? Where can they reach out to you? Where can they learn about you? Obviously, we're gonna throw the three links in the show notes.
Yeah. Um, Best way, find me on LinkedIn, Coach Dan
Okay.
Gordon. Just do a LinkedIn search. You can learn all about me. You can go to my website, dangordonenterprise, singular.com, Dan Gordon Enterprise. You can also check out my podcast for badass entrepreneurs only. And check out a lot of badass entrepreneurs. Well, check out my favorite one. I interviewed Richard Branson's business partner, the guy that started Virgin Records with him.
Oh
Really cool
wow.
guy. Yeah, yeah. Have I invited you on that yet, Jordan?
Yeah, I'm actually
Okay.
going on tomorrow. I'm going on
Okay. Oh,
tomorrow.
cool. Very cool. Okay, great.
Um,
Yeah, definitely want to hitch back and get you on my show because I've done a lot of talking here, and I want to learn more about you.
Absolutely. You've been incredible. I'll throw all of that in the show notes. And I hope you guys gain some value from this. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you for all that you do. And thank you who are listening right now, because you hung in there, you're working hard, you're you're out to make a difference and inspire people to their own level of greatness by doing the same. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes.